I think we're living through the exact same thing right now. There's still a space for all these things, but we're moving from like cinema to TV, which Barry picked up on, and now we're moving from like TV to mobile phone to streamer to microdrama to like short form content. And I think that new format really lends itself to AI, but it's like, how can you partner with great Hollywood producers, storytellers, etc.? Like, how can you help them like build out an IP, build out an audience, a fan base, meet people where they are?
All right, Xavier, tell us about Wonder Studios.
So Wonder Studios, AI native studio, two sides to the business. One is an agency, so, you know, working with music videos, documentaries, feature films, commercials. Essentially, there's a huge demand for like premium AI video content, and how do we service that? Great visuals, great content for people who need it. And then the other part of the business is around IP. So, we think there's a huge opportunity today because of AI to really like allow filmmakers to become founders or artists to become entrepreneurs. And so how do we partner with great storytellers, great pieces of IP, and actually bring that to life, leveraging AI, and turn like, you know, what could be like a local story into a global success? You
mentioned that it's a community-led platform. In your eyes, what is the strategy behind that? How do you see that unfold over the next year or so? That's
a great question. So, you know, I think I can't take credit for the community-led aspect. That's all Justin, my co-founder, chief creative officer. He started something called Real Dreams, I think like 3-4 years ago now. And it was like, he was a traditional filmmaker, traditional creative who was very early to the tools. And I think when that started back then, there was a lot of resistance. And so community was a way of kind of breaking through that. And so, you know, Real Dreams kind of was born out of that, finding like-minded creatives. Obviously, as like time went on, you know, my background was building marketplaces and building platforms. And so when I met Justin, the kind of stars aligned there, and we realized that actually there's such a big business to be built that can be founded on top of community. And I think like that grassroots approach is so key to what we do. I think in terms of like, how does that impact the strategy? I think there's a really clear answer, which is, one of the gating factors to success in this space is going to be access to talent. And so, you know, we've been very lucky to work on some amazing projects to date. And I think part of that is because we got access to the best people. And so if we can build the rails upon which like the AI creative industry, you know, runs, that means that we've got access to like the best talent, the best filmmakers, the best storytellers, which as Wonder allows us to go and work on the best projects. So, you know, there's a kind of like NVIDIA style thing, which is like we need to just grow the pie generally for this thing to succeed. So we want everyone to benefit from the community, but then there's a selfish element, which is that if we can build that community, we become a beacon and the gravitational force for talent, which allows us to scale.
Sure. Makes sense.
And now this is a different approach than some of the other sort of branded AI studios, right? Like you're not looking to develop, you're looking to partner more so and kind of be a platform with other creators versus like producing stuff under like a Wonder Studios brand, or how does this work, and how is this different from like what other AI studios are doing?
It's you know, it's funny, like I think because we're so early in our journey, like people are still figuring out exactly how we work. Look, I think if I broke it down really simply, I love analogies. You probably get like a bunch I
love it too.
I'm a big analogy person. So one of the ones I use is like the iceberg. So if you picture like what's above the water, that's kind of what people see. How do we make money? And then what's below the water? So in terms of what's above the water, there's the agency side of the business, there's the IP side of the business. And, you know, on the agency side, like, yes, there's a really kind of powerful marketplace play where, because we've got access to a community and talent, we can partner with different creatives, we can bring them work, we can work with them to like service clients, whatever it is. On the IP side, actually, we're really pushing for that to be like in-house. Now, we'll also leverage top artists in our network, but like you'll see the Wonder Originals, which was the anthology series we released, like that's Wonder's IP. Now, we definitely partner with filmmakers to create those films. We'll also be doing our own films, but that's like that is a core part of like how we are thinking about the future of the business. Is we as Wonder want to be like a studio that's supercharged by access to great artists in our community, but fundamentally is like being built internally. And just to finish the analogy, so if you look below the water, like what's actually powering that is, that's a big part of like this fundraise. And like our next chapter is going to be, how do we look at the workflows and the proprietary technology that is going to unlock our creatives to be able to create content faster, better.
Yeah.
And for example, if we are going to be leveraging the community, how can we plug them into projects in a way that's like seamless?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of piggyback off what you said, if we look at a traditional studio like Pixar, above the iceberg is, Inside Out and all the movies and the IP and the Disneyland rides. Yeah. And under the water is their pipeline, Render Man, and all that stuff. Yeah. So I could definitely see that.
I didn't pay you to say that. Just I use that the whole time. So
oh, really? Okay. Well, so on that note, are you going to be building models, or are you just going to leverage a lot of good technology that's already out there?
So great question. Okay, so like the way I tend to explain that is, if you think about the fact that we're like in the AI gold rush right now, you've got OpenAI, you've got DeepMind extracting the gold, you've got NVIDIA that are selling the picks and the shovels, and you've got Wonder that's crafting and creating the jewelry. And so we're taking the gold of AI, melding it with like the diamond, the silver of great storytelling, great photography, and then creating the content, or like the content that ultimately people are consuming. So we're not playing down this side of the value chain, extracting the gold. We're not building the underlying models. We're kind of up the value chain in terms of like creating and crafting the content that people are ultimately consuming. Now, there is a technology play there. So if we just extend the like analogy of jewelry, right? Like imagine a watch. There's a lot of work that goes into like a handcrafted watch, like a Swiss watch or whatever it is.
Absolutely. But it's a work of art.
It is a work of art. And like, that's really where we're kind of focusing. We think that that's like, there's a huge opportunity in that space. Now, just because it's a lot of craft doesn't mean it can't also be like systematized. And so there's actually a lot of process that goes into crafting a handmade watch.
Yes.
And so the proprietary technology, the stuff we're looking at there is really around how do you become an expert watchmaker versus like, how do you build underlying models? But obviously, one of the things I think has really helped us so much has been the relationships we've had with the top tech companies. We did this Lewis Capaldi thing with music video with Google DeepMind. We've did our anthology series with Freepik and Fowl and Kling, and so 11 Labs, obviously. So we've had like really strong relationships with the underlying model builders.
You're playing with them all. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and then I think there's a symbiotic relationship there.
Yeah,
we want to be tech agnostic in terms of using the best tool when it's needed, but equally from the tech like underlying model perspective, one is a great way of showcasing what's possible with their technology and like helping pioneer this like new space. So we're like very, very closely connected to the underlying models, but we're not trying to compete and build them.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've wondered too, like to be an AI studio, do you, because the tools are out there and the tools keep getting better and easier to use. So like, do you need to have some like proprietary secret sauce or workflow or models or comfy workflow to differentiate yourself and like kind of give you that edge? Like, do you feel like that's necessary to be an AI studio?
There's a couple of ways you differentiate and build long-term value. One is proprietary workflow for sure. Now, as the models get better, like you would have seen Sora, for example, recently, that edge becomes potentially like slightly eroded. But then how we think about it is that, again, Justin came from like a traditional background. He was an actor in the film 28 Days Later when he was a kid, and he met Danny Boyle and he learned filmmaking from Danny Boyle. And I think that's one of the things that like makes him a great AI artist, is he comes from like that traditional background. And so when I think about the workflows that we want to build, it's less so about like catering to the top AI artists of today. We've got a lot of them in the team and they all have their own very unique ways of working. But it's more about how do you bridge access to this technology for people who are great filmmakers, who have great taste, have great vision, that have never been able to like execute on this stuff. So I think there's a big piece there that obviously like when you actually work on like, if you go beyond just like making a funny video for social media and you're actually trying to craft a film or work with a traditional film studio, there is a lot of like workflow stuff that's actually like kind of, that's not just one model upgrade away. So I think there's kind of long-term value there. And I think the other way we think about long-term value and defensibility is all around IP. And I think that's where, as a studio, we're really interested. And I think just to like double click on that really quickly, it's the idea is that historically, let's just say you wrote a great kids book. We're working with this kids book at the moment out of Sweden that's sold, I think it's about 5 million books now. And so if they wanted to make an animated film, historically they would have had to either sell all of their rights to like a Disney, or they would need millions of dollars in years to go and like fund their own animation.
Right.
And so AI is kind of like lowering the barriers to doing that, but there's still a lot of work in crafting what is ultimately a great kids cartoon. And so if we can partner with those IP owners or storytellers and help them bring it to life without them having to give away all of their IP or their rights, like it's gonna kind of empower them. And I think as a studio, it's an opportunity to really kind of from like grassroots or from first principles kind of like kickstart a catalog. By kind of partnering with people. I think that's where there's like a huge opportunity.
I could definitely see that. It's almost like 5 years ago, that Swedish book just would have never gotten made into a movie.
Exactly.
But now there is an entryway. How do you differentiate from the streaming giants, the Disneys of the world that could easily take that Swedish book and then turn that into a movie and a franchise?
I feel like there's so many ways to answer that. Like one is that we're really interested in partnering with the likes of Disney, because I think that the reality is AI is just an incredibly powerful tool for creating great content. That's kind of the simplicity of it. And I do think that we've got like a unique advantage right now in terms of being one of the preeminent studios in how to leverage AI to create this stuff. But there's so much that Disney brings, obviously like distribution, but also like expertise and great storytelling. There's many different ways that Disney, like, it's why they're so successful. But I think that there's a great opportunity to partner with them to like give them access to these tools and to unlock so much more in terms of like what is possible, but also what type of stories get made. So there's a collaboration play. But then I think in terms of the area where like we've got some real opportunity is where we're more nimble, we're more agile. There's how many great films never get made. How many great kids books never get turned into a film. Now a big reason for that is that like the Hollywood model is hits driven. It's very expensive. There's a power law. You need to make sure that like you're investing in projects that can like return the funds, so to speak.
There's such a barrier to entry.
Exactly. And so now with this, I think where we can be quite agile is like we can run experiments. We can run tests on different IP. We can maybe like pick up some great stories that would have never been chosen, but could be extremely successful. So I think that's where like it's on the edges, and it's about finding that next generation of storytellers. It's why the community is also like critically important. Didn't mention it, but like a massive part of the community and the anthology series that we released was like, how do we unearth the next generation of filmmaking talent? And I think we're pretty uniquely positioned to do that versus like a major.
This is something I've been trying to think of too, and going back to like the filmmaking talent and what you mentioned with, they've had access to some good talent with just AI filmmaking workflows in general. Where are the actual filmmakers, like what roles do you still feel like the humans come into play versus what roles kind of get more automated into like an agentic workflow? Like I'm trying to think of what methods are working. I know like Nick has talked about this too, who did your first episode in the anthology series.
Nick Clevereau,
because he also has a documentary background. He's like, I like to just generate a bunch of stuff, so I have like this footage that I find, and I'm thinking like more of the generating stuff can be agentic. Totally. And then it's like, what's the role for the human? Is it like the director, the writer, the editor? Where is that? What's that sort of workflow look like?
We're thinking about that a lot. So that really falls squarely within like what does that watchmaking at scale look like. And obviously like agentic workflows are a critical part of us succeeding there. And so look, one of the ways I think about that is, I don't know if you've ever seen the Raptor engine slide. It's like the SpaceX Raptor engine, and it's basically the first Raptor engine was this like really clunky, crazy mess of like all these wires. And so the first one's like this crazy clunky mess, and this Raptor 2, it's like a little bit more streamlined. And you got Raptor 3, which is like pristine, and it's kind of crazy how they've done it. If I was to, I think that Raptor 1 is a great representation of like traditional animation or filmmaking today. And then you've got Raptor 2, which is like AI as it stands today. It's like an improvement in terms of efficiency and speed, and there's less parts of the process to worry about. But there's still a lot of redundancy, and there's still a lot of like regenerating images. There's a lot of like, prompt lottery, right? Then there's Raptor 3, which is like where hopefully we want to go with Wonder, which is really keying into like, what are the things that take the creatives the most amount of time? What are the things that are repetitive that like aren't the best use of their like creative talent, that we can find to like maybe agentically solve or like at least make better through like collaborative ways of working. So that's how I think about that in terms of like what will be left, like what will be left if we get there. I think it's gonna be stuff that really matters. So that's why I'm really interested in can we help traditional directors break into this space to unlock these tools, because what will matter is the quality of the story, the quality that, like, it's cliche but like taste, you know, it's like it's like what looks great, what drives emotion. You know, I don't know if you guys saw the Lewis Capaldi music video, but I showed my mom and she cried when she saw it, but there was other people that, you know, we showed and they started crying, and it's like, that's really fascinating. It's
we
like,
have to see it.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's like if you can drive emotion, then you can tell a story, and so very few people can do that.
Yeah.
And it's about finding like that's what's going to be the role.
Kind of riding on your watchmaker analogy, is the goal here to make Rolexes at Timex prices?
That's a good question. That's a great question. I think when it comes to our own IP and like short form episodic content, which is like a thing we're very interested in, that's like a more macro trend. You would have seen micro dramas, and you know, I think there's a whole trend around like how people are engaging with content.
Yeah.
When it comes to like our own IP, take this kids book for example, we're definitely interested in the idea that over time, can the cost of production fall? You know, that's less about like a race to the bottom and like trying to make things cheaper, which I think is a bad framing for
replacing
AI.
humans. And
Yeah. But there's definitely something in like, if you're making short form episodic content and it's the same story arcs, etc., like, are there synergies that over time allow you to still make really high quality content, really great stuff? But you know, it's not as manually intensive as the first Rolex you made.
Yeah.
But I think generally like the projects we take on, the stuff we try and do, we're like very focused. You know, in the beginning we have this. Justin and I laugh a lot about like we have the dog in us, and it's because like, you know, we started in London, obviously, and like it's a harder place to like raise the same amount of capital as the US, and so you've got to be like pretty scrappy, and so we took on a lot of projects. We just like learned by doing anything we could, but now that we've kind of come through that phase and we've kind of proven, you know, to a certain extent proven ourselves, we're very selective on like the projects we take, and it's not the stuff that is like about a quick but like saving money and like it's about like a shortcut. It's like, why are you using AI?
Yeah.
Why is this like an unlock, and why is this cool creatively? And if you work on those projects, I think that's how you're going to like pioneer the space.
And most of the time it probably leans towards, we couldn't do this before, and now we can do it. Right.
For budget reasons. Or,
yeah. Or even creative reasons.
So there's a great example. It's annoying. It's not public yet, but like we're working on this incredible documentary, and a big reason, the why was like they wanted to have archival recreational footage of what it was like in the 90s in this particular setting. And you know, we were able to come up with like that kind of like handheld shaking camera, like authentic vibe, and these are videos that like are telling stories that didn't actually exist. You couldn't actually get them, and so it was a way of like adding to the story that wouldn't have ever been possible, you know, within like the budgets and the time and all that kind of stuff, but also like being able to even de-age certain people and bring them and put them in the scene. So, you know, I think stuff like that is always like a great example of why, like the why.
Speaking of fundraising, which you mentioned with in England, you did just raise a $12 million seed round. What can you tell me about the fund, the round, and what you plan on doing? With the raise?
I shouldn't talk down on England. Like we actually raised from a fantastic like tier 1 VC in Europe called Atomico. And we were also lucky to have Local Globe and Blackbird, who backed us initially, you know, follow on, which was awesome. You know, I think it is definitely one of those things where, because so much of the space has grown and developed so quickly, I'd say that the US, and particularly like, you know, being here in LA, like it's very far ahead right now in terms of the adoption and how people are thinking about it. And so being UK based was hard in terms of being in the space where all the conversations are happening, like that are kind of moving this forward. That being said, we've been really lucky to work with some incredible partners over there, and great to have like Atomico see the vision, see the traction, see where the space is going. And then obviously we've just launched an office in New York, and we've just hiring a team out here. So, I think from a fundraising perspective, why are we raising the money? What are we going to do with it? The first thing is we were just really like blessed to have like an incredible group of investors back us, and you don't walk away from those kind of relationships and the doors that can unlock. So in addition to Atomico, we've got Adobe investing, which is fantastic, and I think it speaks to the technology aspect of what we're building and the future of these workflows. We were able to, actually the CEO of Freepik, who was on this podcast, Joaquin, and their chairman, and one of the CEOs of Omnicom, which is one of the world's biggest advertising company. There's the Sidemen, who are like a top YouTube content creators, one of the best in the world at that. So I think for us, it was like a great opportunity to start to build solid relationships and mutually aligned incentives with really critical stakeholders who will be a massive part of this journey across the world of like advertising, film, YouTube, technology. So that was one. And then two is I think we were pretty ambitious in terms of what we want to do. I think there's a huge opportunity here. There's very clear product market fit. And in terms of the next kind of 12 months, we're going to be making a big push into the US, hiring a lot of the team out here, and also investing more into that technology so we can scale up the IP side of our business. So those are kind of the key reasons, I guess.
I can't think of a better city for you to be in and leverage all the talent agencies, all the talent themselves, and of course the AI community here.
That's it.
We hope you make it here and settle down. Yeah.
Well, hopefully. I love the weather. The one thing I'd say is Justin grew up in he's called Justin Hackney. He lives in Hackney. So I don't know if the simulation is playing a game there, but we have our office in East London, and there is such creative talent back there, and it's an emerging space. So I think you guys are lucky out here in terms of this conversation has been happening for a number of years. It feels like that conversation has been happening for a number of years back home, but has just started to accelerate. And we have this really unique advantage where we can be one of the kind of leading voices in that market, and build and like educate talent there. So, one of the things that we're doing actually, which is I think really exciting, is we're going to launch like a Wonder Fellowship, and partnering with some of the great like film schools back in London. And the idea is like, can we find kids who are like 18 to 20, going to film school, learning about VFX, etc., and like get them an internship in Wonder, learning AI tools. And if Wonder can like build that nexus of talent in our local market, there's a lot of great creatives there. I think that's something that could be a huge superpower of ours, because there's another thing about AI. It's like it's allowing us to tap into talent all around the world, but you do have to build a critical mass, and I think hopefully we'll be a big part of that back home, whilst having the connectivity here to like really tap into the scale that the US offers.
I feel like the building up the LA talent is a good transition.
We have somebody knocking on the
bring
door.
JD in.
Yeah.
All right, so let's transition. JD, welcome.
Hey guys, nice to be here.
I feel like I've talked to you throughout your journey. So give us the brief background on you and Playbook.
Yeah, last we spoke was AWE. Well, the first impression we had was AWE, and then we got to sync together at Culver Cup. So Joey's seen a lot of the early iterations of Playbook. But I think we've been exploring a lot of these tools for a while, and it was the opportunity came out for us to kind of find a new home for some of the technology we were building. And excited to announce that we were acqui-hired by the team at Wonder. So Skylar and I are now building the internal tools that are powering a lot of the workflows behind Wonder Studios' productions. I feel
congrats, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Congrats.
What a feat. I love it.
I feel like this gets into the secret sauce stuff too of how do you differentiate Wonder in the workflows and
I can take a first pass or like a stab at it, because I think a lot of the times we'll hear the analogy of like Figma, right? Like everyone wants to build the next Figma for storytelling.
Yeah,
and that's been something we've been exploring for the last 4 years. for context, Skylar and I, we grew up and went through university at the time when Figma was having campus ambassadors and tried to really like get it out to market, and we saw that explosion. So the analogy is, it's a useful one, but when you actually think about what does that mean to dissect what is Figma for storytelling, it's not just running the creative workflows. You're building a single source of truth. You're building a lot of these pipelines and these tools that allow us to make repeatable productions. So that's a lot of the know-how that we're going to bring together with Wonder to kind of power these productions.
Let me ask, you mentioned sort of putting knobs and tools on top of diffusion models. What are some examples of that? What are some of the shortcomings of, let's say, Comfy UI, which is a very popular tool?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just taking a step back to like redefine the mission, that was from the start what we were set out to do with Playbook, was building those knobs and those interfaces that extend human creativity, not like extinguish it. I think it's very, very easy to try to replace it, but we were looking to find ways to kind of control them and actually meet the creators where they're at and what they want to do. So the perfect example, right, is text prompting is a very limited interface to kind of express your idea for a shot. What we wanted to do is bridge the gap between parametric 3D kind of game engine technologies and methods, as well as how we do it traditionally with a camera. I'm framing the shot. That was like a very simple insight that we were like, I want to frame the shot with this camera in a 3D space. So that was some of the technology we built. And Joey, you were one of the pilot users of that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a video on the channel, a tutorial. I guess it's not relevant anymore, but it was still a great interface for, you could build out a 3D space that's very gray boxed, kit bashed together, have your camera that you're used to, and then it's like, cool, I like the shot, make it look good.
Nice.
And I think that cartels a lot into like our long-term strategy, and the partnership we want to have is, we have ambitions for Wonder to not just be a studio for film. We want to make games. We want to make interactive media. We think that's where things are going. So the team we're building around on the product arm of Wonder is very much thinking about like transmedia and those different kind of experiences we can build with our franchise IP.
We didn't even get into that too, because we've talked about a bunch on the podcast with like different AI studio models. It's different than what you're doing or what we've been talking about, where it's like, okay, you're making an ad or you're like bringing in filmmakers to make something bespoke, versus like a showrunner, like the one where it's like you could make
a million shows.
Everyone can make their own personalized show at scale. Everyone can, be the star. Kind of what Sora did, but like on a, I don't know, bigger scale. Do you see, we've been dubious about that. Do you see like that taking traction, or more so,
or curated professional
filmmaker, storytellers making something?
I don't want to predict it. I think there's every chance that could be really successful. I think, I'm very high conviction in what we're building and like our strategy, which isn't that, but it doesn't mean that can't also be successful. I think our strategy, which is really focused on like the quality of the storytelling, the quality of the IP. Look, I think there's something really interesting, and like people resonate around a story that like has kind of bigger significance than just them. Doesn't mean, not mutually exclusive, doesn't mean you can't have like individualized, interactive content that everyone can make their own show. I'm sure that could be massively successful in time. I think something I say a lot is like, Justin is like a visionary. He's like very ahead of his time, whereas I'm like really great at timing. So, I was lucky. I got to work at Uber in 2011. I got to be part of the first 30 people at Deliveroo. I was one of the early team at Turo launching Europe, and worked for 3 unicorns advice too. So like I kind of had pretty decent read on like luck, on like what the timing is when something's gonna work, and obviously had a very strong call when I saw what was happening in this space. And when I met Justin, it was the same light bulb moment. And I think that the challenge with this space is because it unlocks so much potential. You can go so quickly. There's potential. There's a risk of getting out ahead of your skis in terms of like, what is the market ready to support? So I think one of the reasons we're so excited to have, JD and Skylar join Wonder is that, very impressed with the technology they built and the way they think about the problem. I think the key thing is like, how do you plug that into great timing? And so today we're not so worried about, can we build like lots of different immersive experience and everyone can make their own TV show. We're not even so worried about like, can we take the proprietary workflows we're building and sell that as SaaS? We're way more interested in like, what is a problem today that like has a market? And there's a couple, right? One is like, you can now make a music video or a documentary or an indie film in a way, at a budget, at a speed that was never possible before. You can also partner with like really great IP and bring it to market quickly in a way that was never possible before. And then through technology, make it scalable. So and then through that same technology make it extensible. So to JD's point, like you start with a series, you then could spin it up into a game. You can do cool activations around merch. You can do great full 360 AI marketing campaigns that break the fourth wall. These are all the things that I think are really interesting and like really relevant today. And the workflow piece and the technology piece is critical, but it's not yet at the point in time where it's going to be the most valuable. It will be the most valuable, I think, in about a year to 2 years time. And just maybe the thing I like to say a lot is like we're kind of in the business of like serving fish, right? like a I don't know if you guys have ever been to Spain, but they do this thing like sea bass and salt, and it's this like really great fish dish. It comes out, the salt covers it, and the waiter kind of like breaks it off, and then they serve it up on the plate. Like it's this really beautiful like premium experience. And so we're kind of in the business of doing that. Now the reality is that to do that we had to build a fishing rod, we had to build a pipeline, we had to build the workflow to create that. But as much as people today say, like from a studio perspective or from like a bigger company perspective, as much as they say they're very interested in learning about fishing, what they actually want is the fish served to them. Once that's happened enough times, I think they will be like, oh, how does a fishing rod work?
I'm really digging your analogies, man.
We got the
wavelength. Yeah, I always speak in analogies.
Love it.
So, I mean, look, it seems like the wavelength at which you think about feature films and TV, it definitely resonates with this town. Like, I think Joey's lived here long enough to know that we live and breathe art and storytelling at the highest form. With that context, is it important for Wonder Studios to win accolades in the traditional studio side, whether it's Emmys or Oscars or what have you? Or are you going to carve your own path, or is it somewhere in between?
I think we're going to win one of those awards within the next couple of years. And yeah, I'm very excited for you to see. As soon as I can tell you, I'm going to drop you one of the first documentaries we're working on. I think it's very important that we work with like the best storytellers. And we create ultimately like incredible content because it's a flywheel. It's a flywheel. There's a lot of flywheels in this business, and one is, and why the agency side is very relevant to us, and it's critical that we're like selective on the projects we take, is that it helps build the brand. It helps like show that we have taste, which attracts great talent in terms of like creatives, but also AI creatives.
It's a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think there's a huge need to like win those awards, not for the award's sake, but for the validation of like working with great storytellers. But also at the same time, like there is a new path to be forged. I think the new path to be forged is in a new type of content. So I was reading Barry Diller's autobiography recently, and he had this really fascinating, it's an incredible story, right? And like he had this really fascinating insight around like made for TV movies, and he kind of picked up that like Hollywood was changing and like the format was changing. I think we're living through the exact same thing right now. There's still a space for all these things, but we're moving from like cinema to TV, which Barry picked up on, and now we're moving from like TV to mobile phone to streamer to microdrama to like short form content. And I think that new format really lends itself to AI, but it's like, how can you partner with great Hollywood producers, storytellers, etc.? Like, how can you help them like build out an IP, build out an audience, a fan base, meet people where they are? And so I think Wonder, in terms of where we're going to like forge that path, I think we're going to be pushing into like, where is media going? And that could eventually become obviously like immersive, interactive experiences. But I would hope that when we do make that push, if we do make that push, it's at the right time.
Amazing. Can we use the tagline, the AI of A24? Or
I didn't say that, but I love that tagline.
Okay. Scott Belsky will have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think now you're gonna have a pull quote somewhere.
Well,
the AI of A24.
I love. Look, I'm very glad that you said it and I did it. Something on that. So like, we have a lot of admiration for those guys. I think we said this a lot. Like, they nailed brand. But like, what's the next evolution of brand? It's community
and like fan experience. I think is a big part of that.
I mean, I've seen that graph too that was going around on why am I blanking on his name? He's big on X, but it was like a graph of like the rise of in-person events or just in-person like community and or across ages.
We were just talking about that before we came here. So yeah, I think I think that the evolution of brand is community. This again, I can't take credit. Like, this has been like authentic to Justin in his bones since day one, and that community is like it's this incredibly powerful. And you know what? It's like especially powerful today because of where the world's going, and the fact that like everything is moving so much more online. AI is challenging so many things. It's like it's a big step change, right, in society, and so people are going to be more and more drawn to like human connection, community.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was Greg Eisenberg, big on X. Yeah, it was a chart of declining social media use. Like social media peaked, and then it's been declining.
I love to see
a good
that
trend
across all.
Across all. Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. And it's funny too, because as much as we're like in the AI space and computers and screens all day, it's like, I feel like it has peaked in the.
It also is getting more granular, right? Like an individual person can now have the most amplified voice that history has ever allowed. So how do you give them the tools to then tell that story to its full effectiveness?
To that point, I think a lot of other strategies or what these tools allow our small teams and like individuals to obviously, hit harder and like have a stronger punch. But like, we're still thinking about creativity as like a team sport. And like we're gathering creative directors, creative technologists, different stakeholders that might have, comfy UI skills, might be able to train LoRa's, might be able to just, they're really good at editing. And those are the teams that we want to assemble for these different projects. And that was like a big draw for us because, we came from the pure creative technology side. We're comfy UI, workflow people. So it was a marriage that was very perfect.
That's awesome. I mean, you could say that a film, tier 1 film like Alien Romulus is like the ultimate team building exercise of like 500 people over 2-3 years. So you just still want to play at that level, but also at the very granular level.
Yeah, it's collaborative.
I know you guys were talking about like the Taylor Swift AI stuff the other day.
Yeah.
I have it on like relatively good authority. There's a lot of people involved in making that. And there's a lot of like different artists that went into actually cooking that in like a short time period. So it's like, but again, like that's a great example of like it really punching mainstream. But even something like that, it's not one artist. It's like a number of different people.
Still a team.
Yeah. And I think we noticed it too when we were looking at it. It's like, it's not like a one-click button to make that stuff. We know the amount of refinement because like the locations look very consistent and like everything felt very consistent. Like that takes a lot of work, regardless.
Wish I could go into it more, but
I said it looks like VO3, and I'm probably completely wrong now. So
it's just a hunch. It's just a hunch.
I'm curious how this, with the tools you're building and what that workflow looks like, because also, as you mentioned, you're working with a bunch of different filmmakers, and they all have their probably tools of choice or workflows of choice. And even in regular filmmaking, like every project, different camera, different crew, different editing system. What's the, like, is it kind of, what do these tools look like? Is it going to be like internal Wonder Studio tools? Is it going to be like support for all the projects that come through? Like, hey, what do you need? What are you trying to do? Let's try to figure out a solution for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's kind of where my role fits. I'm really doing like an audit and like thinking about all these problems from first principles. So from our agency business, we're thinking about the brief and the inflow of new projects and what different kind of, starting information comes with that brief. Maybe it is sample imagery. Maybe it's a script. Maybe it's a music. It's a song that's already been written and they want to create visuals for it. So finding all those kind of areas where we're starting with these flows and thinking about what are the different touch points in that like flow chart that gets you to that final product. The fish, for better or worse.
Salty fish.
Yeah, I think
I need a better analogy.
Salty fish.
I haven't had it. I mean, it is very good.
It sounds
I haven't
disgusting.
been to Spain, but I had it somewhere else, and it was like it was a mountain of salt.
Yeah,
right?
people hearing it are gonna be like, "Why is he pitching like a salty fish?" But I promise it's delicious.
It is very good. Yeah,
there you go.
But you have to have had it to understand it.
But exactly, I think Zav was really talking about the 100 tab problem in the same exact thing that you're talking about, right? Like there's Freepik, there's Crea, there's all these different options that have either been aggregators or there's these foundational models that have built suites. And then on the open source, there's, a number of tools on that side as well. So we're thinking about how do we create the efficiency because, you don't necessarily need to have all these tools to kind of create these films. Can we put them all in one place and access them all from one place? So that's kind of hinting at some of the tooling that we're thinking about.
I also think it's a great, like the 100 tab problem is something we spoke about from day one. Justin and I, he's so deep in the tools making this stuff. Like he's often like down the rabbit hole creating on a lot of the projects still. And when you watch the creatives work, it's like it's kind of creative destruction. It's like a whirlwind, like there's hundreds of tabs, there's like Google Hangouts, there's like Slack, there's this, there's that. And so I think from a first principles approach, there's a lot of like interesting fertile ground there around like when you really distill down, what are the kind of like core problems that we can start to like tackle to drive, essentially I think we think about it, this is a Deliveroo thing, but like Anatura thing, I guess, like they were big on unit economics. So really like very complex businesses, but you could distill them down to like the unit economics, and it was a great way of understanding like what the levers are that move these businesses. And so in the Wonder context, we think about what's the revenue per minute that we can generate, and then ultimately like what's the cost per minute to create that. And if you then think about what generates, like what drives cost per minute, one is obviously the technology cost, the API calls, and the second is really just time. And that's the time that it takes for creatives to collaborate on a project, to like move things back and forth. So, I think that's where we're really starting to key in. I guess maybe the only thing I'd add to that is that I think to the Pixar example you gave earlier, why I love that example is, if we set out to build this as a B2B SaaS product today, we'd be selling fishing rods in a town where people are just hungry for the salt fish. And that gives us time to really key in on like what's actually solving our problem versus like chasing product market fit. And so I think like that's probably the thing I'm the most excited about with post raise, is to really start to get stuck in on our own projects, on our own use cases where we need these tools. We need to simplify the stuff for it to work. And I think if we can hone it in that fire, there will obviously become a time, hopefully, where that could also become another revenue driver of the business. But that's not the focus.
I mean, you could argue that you could build a product just to eliminate a lot of the revisions in film. Right, like that's what virtual production is intending to do. Is like, this thing gets approved by 10 different leadership roles. And
I've had this conversation with just other people in the AI space of just something that's like, the Alberto, I forgot his last name, but he built the open source Shot Buddy, a tool to like track your shots, but that's sort of limited. But stuff where it's just like the version of this image, the image to video, the style transfer,
like
the
an
image.
AI agent will take it to the right person, get the approval, take it to the next
person.
Or
even in your editing, like ideally, if you're just in your editing program and you're like, we need to update this shot, it just all updates there, and you don't have to keep.
We're going to bring these guys in on the next roadmap.
Yeah, exactly. You guys can consult it.
We're looking for consulting.
Okay. Well, I think we got a piece of the fishing rod here.
There you go.
But I think just to organize our thoughts though on the product, we're thinking about it in traditional means: pre-production, production, post-production, and there's these cross phases. There's a lot of efficiency to be gained in the cross phases, the handoffs, the archiving, and really the goal on top of solving the 100 top problem, all these other areas, is really just to kind of get you closer to the creative vision that you want at your heart, right? So letting Justin get that image that he has in his head out to reality as fast as he can, and that's it in sum, I'd say.
Okay.
No, that's
the big one.
Made it much simpler than it actually is.
Easier said than done, for sure.
I'm just wondering what both of you think about everything that's sort of happened with Tilly Norwood and synthetic actors, and where you would set your strategy on this very sensitive space in Hollywood right now.
At 2, Eddie.
Well, we can cut it out.
No, it's such a great question.
Yeah.
I actually love it.
Okay.
It's such a precarious place, and it's so hard being a founder in this space, trying to like tread that line. And so I have a lot of empathy in terms of like, no one wants to see people get blown up like that in that way. Also, like, I have a lot of empathy on the other side where like there's very like valid concerns there. And so I say all of this with like the humility of like, this is a very hard space to navigate. Now, from our perspective, I think we've hopefully got a very clear way of like how we want to work with the traditional industry and actually have like a really symbiotic relationship. And it's fortunately it's not in like creating actors or anything like that. It's like, for me, like, the kind of soundbite way of saying it is like 90% of scripts never get read, right? Or like another way of thinking about it is like how many great films never get made.
Yeah.
And so we work with like a bunch of great writers, directors, and it's like my favorite part of the job. It's like you get to, and we're getting into this space. It's like actually like, I think I was just born in the wrong era, but like I love this idea of like developing a project, putting the right people in the room across like writers, directors, executive producers, AI talent, and taking something like a great concept for an independent film that would have never been made, never been possible, working on like a teaser teaser for a film based on a script that allows that person to then go raise finance so they can go make the film. And like, you know, it sounds trite maybe, but it's true. It's like, I think we're going to get way more films made. We're going to get way more like less commercially safe traditional Hollywood films made, which I think is going to like lift the craft. And hopefully what that's going to be is like a boon for the industry. It's going to be a boon for actors. It's going to unlock more roles. And like we're, as a studio, like we want to work with traditional. We want to make hybrid films. We want to like unlock that production value on a shoestring budget for like a first-time director. Mm-hmm. That's what's really exciting. So, you know, I think just one of those quirks of fate and timing. I think also Justin's background being an actor and a filmmaker, we've kind of like really tried to steer into like, how do we unlock the industry? Because I think that AI is like not an existential threat to this industry whatsoever. And I think maybe like bring it back to the first thing I said, it's you know, this is like probably a non-contrarian take in like our circles, but definitely a contrarian take in the world at large. I think this is going to be like one of the greatest boons for like creatives and like traditional creatives, because for the first time ever, like a filmmaker can be a founder. You know, mm-hmm. You can be a solo filmmaker that's had a piece of IP you've wanted to develop for years that you can now bring to market in a way that was never achievable. Build an audience, build a fan base, build the world, and then you can go to a studio and you can go with leverage in a way and say that here's this great piece of IP that you would have never greenlit, but look, it's already got all these fans.
It's already made. You don't have to fund me to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, you know, if you want to turn this into now like an incredible feature-length film,
right?
Pay me $40 million, please.
I gotta say, Xavier, I mean, for, you know, you claim to not sort of be Hollywood insider, right? You have your background in Uber and Turo. You seem to know Hollywood pretty well, and I'm quite impressed.
I appreciate that, man.
I mean, your sentiments are spot on with how sort of I see AI. You know, it's an enabler, and I think it ultimately is just empowering people who have been sort of left behind.
Totally. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I was giving Natty a hard time for the Tillinor because I feel like that got blown out of proportion, and also and I think solely because it was called, like, they called it an AI actor. Mm-hmm. When it's like
first like, signed by an agency too, right?
Yeah, and that, and when it's like it was an influencer. We've had virtual influencers. Like nothing about that seemed like acting. It just became this like crazy story that took a life of its own.
It's just a really hard space to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, to what you were saying, you know, I mean, Kevin the Kid did actors driving performances, and your produced film, The Drift, you had actors driving the performances there, right?
Yeah. Shout out to Noah. He's an incredible film. Like he's, you know, that's actually, you know what, just on that, you just reminded me. It's, if you ever look at our like YouTube channel, like a massive part of the anthology is the behind the scenes, which I know, you know, you guys love because you're deep in the tools, but I actually think that it serves two purposes. One is for like the AI, aspiring AI filmmakers out there, like learning how it was made, but also for the people who are a bit more skeptical. You take something like Noah's film, The Drift, and you can see like the kind of craft that went in, the actors' performances, the style transfer, this like new kind of like genres, like he's pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And when you actually see all the component parts that go in, it kind of demystifies this idea that it's like, oh, it's just someone prompting on a keyboard. Like, you know, yes, there are people that do that, but in terms of like the stuff that's pushing the craft, a lot of it is hybrid. It's partnering with actors, it's partnering with, you know, writers, and finding ways to like push the boundaries using these tools.
Yeah. Closing question. What's your go-to AI tool or tools that you use all the time?
I mean, I'm still biased towards Comfy UI and having full controllability. Nice. But I think our team really likes Freepik.
Freepik is great.
Yeah.
I'm the least technical in the team.
I think he likes granola though.
I like granola.
I haven't tried it.
I've heard good things about granola.
Shout out to those guys. Just because it's easy. If I have a great analogy and I forget it just gets stored in the thing.
Give me my analogies.
I have to give a shout out to Freepik. Like we got, you know, 11 is also an incredible tool, like an incredible business, and amazing to have Maddie, the founder there, as like one of our first investors and like a massive champion of the team and advisor. But also, I think Freepik has been great for us. Got a great relationship with that team. Yeah, I think the enterprise account is very useful because when we're working on like some of the biggest projects in the world, which I hinted at earlier, you know, it's critical to have like the right technology stack behind you and the backing of someone like a Freepik.
Amazing.
Yeah, solid tool.
Yeah,
cool.
If you have any questions about this interview, give us a shout and email us at denoised@vpland.com, and then we'll get to it on the next episode. And definitely engage on the YouTube comments and on Spotify.
Thanks for watching. Links and everything we talked about at denoisepodcast.com. I'll have links for all of your Wonder Studio links.
Amazing. Thanks for having us.
Thanks
a
for
lot.
watching.
Catch you in the next episode.